Welcome to a new episode of Mind Your Mind. I'm very happy today. We will be playing and talking about play. My name is Roxana Sepulveda, and today I am with Portia Tung. She is a play alchemist, executive agile coach, founder of the School of Play, and she unlocks human potential through the power of play. So it will be fun, it will be theoretical. We will give you lots of information as well for you to get to understand how to incorporate more play and joy in your life to improve and have fulfilling moments in your day to day. So, Portia, thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Oh, Roxana, thank you for inviting me. Very excited to play with you today.
Yeah, when you proposed the idea of thinking about play and your expertise around play, I thought this is a very, very good point to think about preventing burnout, increasing resilience, reducing anxiety, bringing joy. Because when we are working for so long with and witnessing the suffering of others, sometimes and most of the time, I'm sure many frontline workers that are listening to us will agree that it's difficult to connect with that element of joy and playfulness in life. But tell us, how did you get into thinking about play?
Well, it's funny you talk about burnout, and part of the reason I've been so drawn to your work, especially with your lovely frontline workers, listeners, is because I myself came to play in a darker moment of my life. And it was a conjunction of two things between my personal life, of course, and my professional life. I'd recently given birth to a newborn bouncing baby girl. And before that, I'd spent, a good 10 years of my life working in organizations, helping out with organizational transformations and using play to connect hearts and minds to enable people to really be willing to adopt and adapt to a new way of working. So I thought
Uh-huh.
I was pretty solid in playing with adults because that's mostly what I've done. But when my baby girl came, I realized two things. One, that I didn't want to play with her, that I'd rather do the washing up than play with her, but also that I was in a job where actually I was losing the will to live. That I felt like
Mm.
I was doing the zombie shuffle day in, day out. And I kept asking myself, is this all there is? And it was a very dangerous, edgy time. So I
Mm.
had to kind of look into my Mary Poppins bag of tricks and think, well, I know all this about play. I know what happens when we don't play enough. You know, the play deficit and play deficiencies that come with it, and the suffering you mentioned. But I also knew the kind of resources and
Uh,
resilience and the magic that happens when we played enough. So that's how I really traveled much more down that route and looked at something called play alchemy.
Fantastic. And because as adults, we just like play. We're like, "Well, I'm not a child anymore. I mean, what are you talking about? Or play? What's that about?" So, what is play? How do you understand this notion of playing as an adult?
Yeah, so the basic definition of play, I draw inspiration from Dr. Stuart Brown. And true play is safe play, fair play, and being a good sport. So those are the three fundamentals of play. And I just
Uh-huh.
want to repeat them so that our lovely
Please
listeners
do.
can really grasp it. So true play is safe play, fair play, and being a good sport. And I can feel like the tingliness sort of in the air now because actually, when people really reflect on that, they realize, I didn't know what that was. I didn't know that's what true play means. Because very often in the workplace, especially, we end up developing and maybe attracting unhealthy relationships where, oh, someone says something quite narky and nasty to you in a meeting, has just humiliated you in front of your boss. It might well even be your boss, and
Mhm.
you don't know how to respond. And they go, "Oh, I was just playing with you, Roxana." Right?
Yeah,
It was a
yeah, yeah.
punch in the gut. It was an act of violence, actually, towards you, your person. And then afterwards, everyone is kind of leaves the meeting traumatized, having witnessed you being harmed in some way, right? And
Mhm.
you know that childhood saying, "Sticks and bones may, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt." We know from psychology and neuroscience now that is absolutely not true, right? And it's this
Yes.
inability to acknowledge and face this truth that we know now that that's the only way that's going to get us out of the suffering that very often we find ourselves. So
And
that's
you
kind of
make,
how I got to this place.
yeah, and I don't know if this is in tune with what you're explaining, but what comes to mind with what you're saying for me is when we think about laughing at something instead of laughing with.
Absolutely. And I think as children, the way we play is so greatly influenced by our environment and our adults, right, around us, that we end up learning the way they play. So when we look at really, really healthy young children, and actually, when we talk about healthiness in children, the way they play tells you so much. And there are 5 key attributes of the way children and adults play in a healthy way, which I noticed through observation, of course, and firsthand experience of playing with my daughter and her friends, from when they're little to now, which is, did you know that playful human beings are resourceful,
Mm-hmm.
responsible, respectful, resilient, and real? Real, by which I mean authentic, like the velveteen rabbit, real, like the stuffed toy rabbit who longed to become acknowledged and be this real living rabbit so that she could be loved by this little boy. So when I started observing this in adults, I turned to my daughter and I started observing her, and she was 4 years old. And then a strange thing happened, Roxana. Do you want to know?
Yeah, please tell us.
So
I'm
I
super
was like,
curious.
yeah, how can children know? How
Mm-hmm.
can children know to be responsible and respectful? It makes no sense to me because it seems so opposite, doesn't it? Because when we look at the way the majority of adults are managed in the workplace, we don't trust them, do we? We feel like we need to get them to fill in timesheets and do all sorts of weird things, like track the number of keystrokes they make on their keyboards to make sure they're doing efficient work. So I was like, what is this? Because the children are responsible and the playful adults are. What's making this happen? What's motivating them?
Mm-hmm.
So it turns out that play has a life cycle.
Uh-huh.
And
Please tell
yeah,
us more.
yeah, and I am deviating a little, like I'm running around a bit, and we will come back to this point. But play has a life cycle, and I feel like, one of the Attenborough brothers now, as we observe play in the wild. So in this play cycle, at 12 o'clock at the very beginning is something called metalude.
Mm-hmm.
And metalude is when you might find yourself having a quiet moment at work incredibly, and you think, oh, now I have this moment. What am I going to do with this? Right? It might be your lunchtime 15 minutes. That's the
Mm-hmm.
metalude. So you start kind of imagining or brainstorming ways you can do this. And then once you come up with an idea that you like, so you might think, oh, I'm going to see if Julie, in the next ward is free, because I think she's normally free at about this time on a Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
Then what you'll do is you'll walk down the corridor and you'll look for Julie, or you might text her. So the way the texting or the issuing of this invitation to play is what's called a play cue.
Uh-huh.
So a bit like when you're playing tennis, you've hit the ball over to the other side of the net, the other side
Mm-hmm.
of the court, so that your friend can return it. So
Yeah.
when she responds and says, "All right, see you in the car park in 2 minutes," then that's called a play return. She's just returned your volley of the tennis ball back to you, and then when you both get downstairs, you get into what's called play flow. And that
Uh-huh.
play flow is what Mihai Csikszentmihalyi talks about, this flow where, time passes when you're having fun. It's when you do your best work. And of course, neuroscience tells us now, when you're in that flow, you cannot be critically judgmental about yourself or others. Right. So all of a
Yes.
sudden, your inner critic gets a break. It gets a tea break, a play break, right? Because it's just so busy. Like, oh, I'm just going to go for a nap while the rest of me is chilling out, having fun. And you're probably at the peak of your problem solving when you're in this play flow
You
with
are in the
Julie,
same.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
Julie
yeah.
says, oh, you ask each other how your day is. And Julie goes, oh, I've got this issue with these syringes. We're short of syringes in our ward at the moment. Not sure what we do. And then you go, well, actually, I know exactly where there's a stash of them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think so commonly we mistake socializing as something that's futile, right? And unworthy. But this is how we've lived for so many years as human beings in tribes, haven't we? We travel to the other tribe in the other village just so we can find the medicine woman because our child needs her. And that's
Absolutely.
what happens.
And what it is as well on what you're saying, that it strikes me that I think has become, or I've heard so many times, is something difficult, that people, it's easy to get in isolation when you are overstretched, overworked. It's very easy to get into isolation where you don't get that moment of connection, or you don't even have the energy or the initiative. And there are so many, and negative thoughts as well interfering in that very moment of sending that invitation, connecting with someone. So saying, hey, shall we have lunch? Shall we go for a walk? Shall we, whatever you want, to invite someone, and to have that openness to see what happens, not to try it. Let me invite my friend that I don't see for donkey years. Let's see what the answer could be, and take it from there as well. No, I think there is a pivotal moment in that very invitation in the cycle, because that can lead you to something that is greater and fantastically good. And but in the process of being sometimes overwhelmed, we lose that intention, and it's easy to get then into isolation.
Well, absolutely. And I think this is very common in frontline work, but also in corporate work. Even with computer programmers, a lot of us just want to do the best job. So we will be prepared to take on more work. And very often we do that because we want to help others out. It's not
Yes.
just because we want to do our best work. So absolutely, the stress and the burnout. And I think this goes back to a lot of what Brene Brown talks about, on vulnerability, which is when we find ourselves disconnecting and going down that abyss or the cave, what we actually need to do, which is totally counterintuitive, is to play. But
Uh-huh.
children know this. So when they are
Intuitively.
yeah, they
Yeah.
know they are still connected fully with their bodies. And I think that's the thing, right? Because what we've talked about here, when we have that downward spiral of despair, is because we are locked into the left side of our brain, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So if we just use that very simplistic model, that
Uh-huh.
left side of our brain is our instrumental brain. It's really good at working well and getting things done. But actually, did you know it's incapable of making decisions without the right side?
Mm-hmm.
Right. We know this through neuroscience now. And also the left side of the brain will say, no, I don't need anybody else. I can manage this perfectly on my own. So it's no wonder that it goes down that downward spiral because it has no other option, because that is the way it works. Now, when we look at actually how else we can work and tap into our bodies, we can actually say, well, we have multiple brains, right? Again,
Uh-huh.
we look at how the neurons work and the structural of what looks like a neural network in parts of our body. And it's just not in our left brain, and it's not just in our right brain, it's also in our heart, right? And in our gut.
And our gut. Yes.
Yeah. And so this gut feel, again, children know if they're upset and they've hurt themselves, and you say, what do you need? Um, how do we play with this? You issue an invitation for them to ignite this kind of positive survival instinct. And they might say, I've hurt myself. I want to go home. I just want mummy. And
Mm-hmm.
then you know as the school nurse to call. But yeah,
Yes.
but if they say, actually, I just want to stay for the sleepover, I'll be okay. It's not that big a deal, right? Then the person that's trying to help you knows, actually, you're right. Let's trust you. You have your own ability to do this. And then you help comfort them, and then they move on. And I
Mm.
think so often we discount again this gut feel and this heart feel. And that's kind of circling back to my story of how I came to play, was in that dark moment of
Mm.
between work and life. And I knew I needed to be a healthy mother, right? For my
Uh-huh.
child. And I needed to
Yes.
be a healthy human being to be a leader, to do my job, because it would be irresponsible otherwise. I had to do the completely unintuitive thing, which was to go out and play.
Yes. And the other thing that I hear from what you're saying is that you obviously, your story is connected with your daughter, that make you think about these things as well. But I am hearing that it's not necessary to have children around you to get into this playful zone.
Oh, yes. And actually, this is the beauty of it. So I created something called the play quotient scale, and I'd be happy to share this with your listeners. And I started observing ways that we can measure whether or not a human being is playful. Because
Uh-huh.
I thought, well, we like so much measurement in this kind of Western society of ours that if people self-measure, then they can gauge how much progress they're making. And I
Uh-huh.
realized that in order to measure play, you can't measure um, features of a playful adult because
Okay.
because there's no stereotype. Just like you said,
Uh-huh.
actually, the attributes of the whole resourcefulness, responsibility, etc. All of that. How can I tell Roxana is a playful adult just by that? So
Uh-huh.
it turns out that what we need to do is measure the outcomes of play.
I see. Tell us more how this works.
So, to know whether or not you've played enough,
Uh-huh.
you can look at several categories of well-being. So, some of the statements that I've put together are: I am fit and healthy.
Mm-hmm.
I am calm and confident. I am agile, as in flexible. I'll just do a few more. I am curious. I think for myself. I am a good communicator. You know, I am emotionally self-aware. I manage my emotions. I feel joy. So I started putting together these statements and then inviting the adults to then identify whether or not they feel it's definitely false in their circumstance, mostly false, moderately true, mostly true, or definitely true. And through these statements, very often the adults will be delighted that they find themselves more playful than they believe
Then
themselves.
think. Yeah, I see. I
And I think
see.
that's the block, Oksana, that I think both of us have been swimming towards to uncover, which is that a lot of adults assume they're not playful anymore.
Yes.
And
Because the idea of playing, I mean, at least in me personally,
sure.
when someone say play, it sounds to me more childish, more
Yes.
like connecting with the child side of myself. And if you feel that you're not connected with that, then it is not for me, no?
Yes.
But yeah, but what I'm hearing as well with what you're explaining is that actually playing is something that brings us joy, something that those activities that make us be in a place where we are in flow, that we
Yes,
are,
absolutely.
relaxed, having fun, connecting, is that kind of activities, right?
Yes, absolutely. And so connecting with other human beings is one thing, but connecting with your own body and how you're feeling. So,
Uh-huh.
yeah, so obviously when we're experiencing daily traumatic experiences and witnessing the suffering of others, like you say, it's almost like we have to split ourselves from
Yes.
the neck down to the head up so that it disconnects our heart because it's so painful to watch, right?
Yes.
And yet we can preserve this empathy if we are able to play safely with ourselves, right?
Uh-huh.
And what that means, I've found, is to really work on our own emotional intelligence and emotional management.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know if you've come across the term alexithymia.
No.
Yeah, it's a very rare term that only, I would say, very specialist experts look at. And alexithymia is the inability or difficulty to be with your emotions. So if we grew up in a family where emotions were not allowed, right?
Mm.
And usually that goes hand in hand with play. You're not allowed to play. You're 11 now. Put your toys away. You get to be grown up now, and all you're going to do is work, not play. Play is for children. You know, when we have that kind of upbringing, we may naturally seek work. That
Yes. Or also, you make me think about those circumstances in which, for whatever circumstances, children need to take more responsibilities, either because a parent has died, or
yes,
there are separations or illness, or other circumstances that force children, young people, to gain lots of kind of adult responsibilities and
absolutely.
sometimes take care, even for their own parents.
Yes, yes, yeah. And
So
the sort
they
of
lose
care
that
ceremony.
connection. Yeah, so they do lose that connection with the possibility of being playful and being a child. as well.
Yeah. And on that note, what I would say is from observing children, it tells us so much about adults, is that the moment that a child is offered an opportunity to play, they take it. And that
Yes.
and that's what I find with adults too. So even getting yourself to reflect, well, actually, what is what did I used to enjoy doing as a child? So let's try that, Roxana. What's an early memory of play for you?
First thing that comes to my mind, something I used to love to do, was to play with my brother's little cars. And I will go in every, because I will be flat on the floor on my belly, looking at the connection of the wheels
Wow.
and the floor. So I
Yeah,
like the way they move, and so wherever
yeah.
this imperfection, I can't come with a word, but whatever
Mm.
sort of little things were on the floor, it will
Oh.
make the car move, right?
Oh, with
And
the
so that
bumpiness
was
of the
the
obstacles.
bumpiness and the obstacles, yeah, exactly. And so that was the ride of these cars that I was,
Oh,
and I really like them. I really, really like them. That's what comes immediately to my head
yeah.
when you ask me that.
And yeah, and that's even from just that memory there, there's so much we can harvest, right? So that tells me actually, and the joy on your face now, which I wanted to share with the listeners because they can't see, this big smile is, physical play. That you
Yeah,
actually like playing with your hands and you probably quite enjoy movement with your body. And also, there's this curiosity, the seeking of trying to understand how, when you do this to the car, it does this, And I mean, that's what physicists do, right? They're
yeah.
playing with molecules all day in many ways, right? Or physical devices and objects. So that's another way to really look back at what we enjoyed doing as children and then harvesting ideas for what we used to do. And I bet you, Roxana, you'd get probably just as much joy if you played with some of those little toys now when you're with
I,
your
I,
clients.
I very possibly will. Yes, I
And
wouldn't
so,
be surprised. I do.
so
Yeah.
another idea is actually to go out and treat yourself. So instead of treating yourself to a muffin or a latte, why not buy yourself that little car to play with?
Well, I have something to show you, and
Yeah,
and
please.
sorry for everybody that is not being able to see us, but I do have. Oh, I don't have it here, but I did kept a little train. I do have. Let me show you.
Oh, yes, of course. Thank you. And we take time to play.
So look what I
Absolutely.
have.
Oh,
It's a small train that I got from my brother-in-law that passed away. So I
okay.
kept it because he was a collector of trains.
Oh,
And so I
wonderful.
have this little train. And when I discovered them, it was like, wow, a
Oh
home. And
gosh.
that's something that I have kept so preciously because yeah, they have little wheels, and this one in particular is with the sign of the red arrows,
Oh
which I
wow. And
also love.
Hornby Railways. Oh, let me
Yeah.
read out the box because the readers might like
Yes.
it. It's the 00 gauge scale models, Hornby Railways. It's a red arrows.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it's the red arrows one. So amazing. And so yeah, this is something very special, that connects me as well with those that curiosity of that you get in playing with these little objects that take you into play. And that's something that I kept for myself as well as a mean. I don't have a car, but I do have a little train.
And I think, and when we look at that little train, it reconnects Roxana and her heart with someone she loves as well.
Exactly,
And
exactly.
I think often and I know your listeners are pretty edgy and emotionally intelligent and broad. So when we often reconnect to a lost one, it's so easy to just reconnect with the sadness, right? But in so many ways, they're being remembered, right? It's like he's
Yes.
there in your room playing with you again. So that's a very moving, touching thing as well, because that's
Yes.
play brings us closer to the past and the present and the future.
Absolutely, and it sounds so useful with all what you're bringing and the detail that you are looking at it. So, what I hear from what you were saying as well for our audience to, just to repeat it, I
Yes.
think, do you think to ask ourselves this very question that you did to me, what is your first memory of playing? is a starting point to start to incorporate more play in your life? What would you
Yeah.
say?
I mean, for me, that is really truly a powerful question. And it was in kind of recognizing the responses that people would give me to that question. It just let me know that play is so tender. Because whilst it can bring up memories of joy, it can also bring up memories of sadness and disappointment. Because actually, some adults would say to me, they tell me, oh, I had Teddy, and Teddy was my best friend, and I've never had a good friend like Teddy again. But I lost Teddy when I was 11. He was put up in the loft.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And I don't know where he is now, you know? But this is the thing. So play actually reconnects us fully if we allow it to all our emotions.
Yeah, it's about reconnection, right? Reconnecting
Yeah.
with ourselves and reconnecting with others too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to share another insight from this early play memory. Roxana, how old were you when you remember
Oh,
playing these trains?
I don't know. I must have been like 3 or 4.
Okay.
No,
So
no older than that.
yeah, so in general, the play researchers say that when they ask these questions, most children say between 5 to 7 years old. So the
Mm-hmm.
fact you were younger means that, what I've observed is that those adults who remember a younger play memory are often more playful now as adults.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So it's
Okay,
yeah,
interesting.
so it's like the early play carries through and enables them to overcome the difficulties in life because we all have our fair share and they stay playful. And I think that's what struck me, when we met last year at a trauma conference of all things.
Exactly, yes.
To find someone who was there who was seeking to serve life of others and herself and to be playful. And I wanted to share as well, if I may, that my earliest play memory was when I was 12.
I see. Uh-huh.
So that's when I was like, ding, 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 ding. There's a train coming and I'm on the tracks and I need to do something different, right? Because I knew it
Yes.
wasn't between the ages of 5 to 7. And that's when I started my journey of reclaiming my play. So, very much, yeah, my story has been to find out how to enable adults to play again by sharing my own story.
And how then our frontline workers then can, do you think we can invite them with some actions to follow to reconnect a little bit more with their own playful selves
Yeah.
and start to reclaim this area in their life?
Sure. So, one of the first things we've already covered is reminisce how you like to play as a child. So, a few more questions for consideration for contemplation is what were your top three pieces of music as a child? And
Mm-hmm.
let's play with this because this could be music you spent your pocket money on. That seems to normally have the biggest vibe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's no shaming in play, right? True play, safe play, fair play, being a good sport, and of course respect. So I'll share mine. I spent my pocket money buying Rick Astley's "Never Gonna Give You Up."
That's fantastic.
You know,
And that's a very good song as well.
yeah, and it's lovely. And I spent money buying Whitney Houston's "Greatest Love of All."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, that's nice. Yes.
yeah. When we learn to love ourselves, that is the greatest love of all. And of course, starships. Nothing's going to stop us now. And you'll find them when you go down this journey that each of these song titles are like a summary of where I am now as an adult. And without those songs, I wouldn't find myself here because I would have given up earlier.
Yes. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So it's like as children, we have reprogrammed ourselves for resilience, for these kind of like wonderful resources in our invisible backpack that we still carry. But,
Yes.
but we've simply forgotten that it's there and it's just waiting. And the same thing with TV programs. What were your favorite TV programs if you watched TV, Roxana, as a
Oh,
child?
yes, it was a little mouse called Topollillo. I don't know
Oh,
if you could see it here in the
yeah,
UK, but
sure.
yeah, it was something that is an Italian program that
Yeah.
rarely we saw in Chile. And that was the one that sent me to it. It had a song and all sorts of things that helped me to that I will watch it before bedtime. So it was
Wow.
very possibly in the afternoon at some
And
point.
what did you enjoy most about this lovely
It
man?
was the songs and the dancing. This little is a little mouse. Yeah, it's a mouse, topollillo.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, it moved the way it moved.
Oh,
It's a puppet, right? So it was quite
oh,
interesting how it moved. Yes,
yeah,
I'll try to find something and send you
yeah,
some videos of that. So what I'm hearing as well is go down that memory lane. Help yourself
yeah,
in connecting with those early memories and get started from there. What
yeah,
will be the next step, do you think?
yeah. So another thing is to do this with friends or even colleagues.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then I created something called like your own play profile, and these questions are part of that, right? So what are your favorite childhood music or toy? What is your favorite childhood toy? That's another one. These are often very
Mm-hmm.
fun icebreakers actually to do just with your colleagues or your friends. And again, it
Yes.
creates this connection, and very often it reveals why you might feel attracted to this colleague so much and why you enjoy working with them. An example is I have a client that I've always enjoyed working with, and she was attracted to my play work very early on. But it was until like 3 years later that when I asked her this question, what is your favorite childhood toy? And she said, oh, it's a Cabbage Patch Kid. And I said, so was mine. That I was like, oh, that's what my heart detected in her.
Okay.
Our
Yes.
instincts, this little mouse. When you said that, I was like, oh, I remember Tom and Jerry and how resourceful Jerry was. So it's using this playfulness to reconnect us. And in many ways, it neutralizes, it brings a different
Yeah.
part of us. It
Yeah.
gives
Yeah.
that permission for a more humane, friendly part of us to show up at work.
That's what I was thinking. It make us more humane, help
Yeah,
us to connect at a more humane level, especially as you say, when we have to be detaching our head from our hearts in order to be
yeah,
able to do the job that we have to do in the middle
yeah,
of crisis situations,
yes.
complex circumstances, responding to complex needs, and so on. We are reaching the end of our episode, but I don't want to leave without giving some maybe some last messages that you feel are essential in this process of becoming more playful, bringing more playfulness in your life, and how the frontline workers then can continue to work and assist. No, how play can actually
Yeah.
assist the
Mm.
well-being of frontline workers.
Yeah. So it's about finding what brings you joy now and from the past, and what might bring you joy in the future. So if you've always had a passion for horses, but you haven't ever been horse riding because perhaps your family couldn't afford it when you were younger, well, why not go for just one lesson, or why not go volunteer to go brush a horse's mane as a volunteer at a horsey place. It's so easy in many ways to realize our dreams than we think. And what I notice as well about adults when I speak to them about play is they say to me, Portia, I don't have time to play. I don't have energy to
Yes.
play. And you know what? Even if I had time and energy, I probably wouldn't know what to do with it anymore. Right? Now, we can choose to mourn that and say, oh, well, that's really sad. But once we grieve that and acknowledge it, actually, let's look at this equation, right? Because it's all about intention. If you look at children, what is their intention? Their intention is to have their best life and to have the most joy. So, what is their purpose? Well, the purpose is get as much of that as possible going. And so, whenever, even in the supermarket, they will be playing with something. It's never a chore for them. So if we set our intention to play, right, and our purpose is to have a good time, regardless of the situation, and do our best, then we can pay attention and dedicate attention to that sort of thing. Schedule time into our calendars to do this. Then we decide to allocate the energy,
Yeah. Hmm.
and then we look at the time we have, because even 5 minutes makes a difference. Even 3 breaths makes a difference, because that's playing with your mind and giving your left brain a bit of a break. So every little matters. And whenever it's possible, make friends. play with friends, make new friends, people you don't know, and even people at the bus stop. Those are the best ways to connect. So yeah, play on and
Absolutely.
play well.
Yeah, well, what a lovely message. And I so love what you just said, that it's easier to make your dreams come true than you think. Is such a powerful
Mm.
message. And I thank you for that, because it's a fantastic reminder that one one thing, one step, one little movement, 1 minute, to allow yourself that one initial step can take you into a different spiral, in terms of, and a more positive spiral of positivity and joy, and sort of a relief from the difficulties and the stretching of yourself that you may be experiencing if you are a frontline worker in anywhere in the world, really. So thank you so very much, Portia, for all what you shared with us today. The last thing that I want to remind everybody that is listening to us is that if you were inspired or you connected with anything that we said during this episode, please help us to help, and share it. Share it to any of your colleagues, your managers, friends, family, anybody that you think that will benefit hearing this, but also who you may want to play with, so they also receive the message and they can get inspired as well in getting to play with you. Yeah, Portia?
Yeah, absolutely. And like Roxana says, whatever your wish or hope or longing, play will always find a way. Let's try that, right? You'll be surprised by what's possible. Thank you so much. Oh, and the last thing I wanted to say is that with your lovely frontline workers, I really continue to do my play work, and I'm in the process of getting my own play memoir written. The reason that's possible is because I see play as a public service.
Yes.
Because when
Uh-huh.
we play and we feel better and people witness it, they feel joy just from seeing you have fun. And that's how we know humanity has true heart. So thank you so much, Roxana, for inviting me to play today.
Oh, I'm so pleased to have you here and for this conversation. So I'm really grateful, and for sure we will carry on playing somehow, somewhere, and we will want to hear as well about any developments that you have and all the work that you do. So thank you for today, Portia.
Thank you. Goodbye. Play well, play on.